So we bought this property in 1984. It was originally 2.5 acres. It's a long, thin, narrow piece of property. And this is a picture looking down our driveway of what it looked like back in that time. We just had trees along the fence rows and a few interior trees. And so this is what it's grown into with help from native and non-native plants that I've put in. I was a landscaper until 1992, and so I brought a lot of things home from jobs that I had to take out. I would bring here. Also met Bill Fontenot during that time, and got the native plant bug and never lost it. So I'm back again after retirement from Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority after 22 years with them, and working with native plants again. So one of the first native plants that I put in myself is this fringe tree. Fringe tree or Grancy graybeard. And it's a native understory tree in the woods. It has beautiful white fringe flowers in the springtime. We take our picture under this tree every spring. It's like our Christmas card. It's our Grancy graybeard. And along a lot of the trees that were originally here are water oaks and black cherry, hackberry, elderberry. There's a river birch right by the flower pole there by our blueberry patch. We have a lot of cypress trees. We're cultivating the elderberries for the birds because we can always count on being able to view birds at that time. Here's a silver maple. It's been here since Neil's 50th birthday party. Should I give away your age? 19 years. That's the silver. Okay, that's the black cherry. And here's one of the original black cherries, very large specimen. And we are combating Japanese privet all the time, pulling it out. I've got some native huckleberry and blueberries, vaccinium, that I'm planting here under the trees. Some sassafras. It's all small, but I think it should do well there. The junipers, the cedars were here when we moved in. We allowed them to grow. As you can see, we pile up a lot of sticks for wildlife, so that we have a lot of birds that use it, rabbits, and no telling what else, but that's what I see. So these water oaks have been here from the original. They were, I guess they were in this photograph or just afterwards, and they dropped some limbs, but we're pleased with them. So we are keeping our Japanese privet on the south side of this property along the fence line because we share it with a cattle pasture and hay, and our farmer next door often oversprays herbicide onto our property and has done quite a bit of damage to our native plants. So I use that privet as a barrier to stop some of the spray from getting onto my property. The entrance to our birdhouse, I planted a native anise plant, Elysium floridanum, alongside the ditch. So they get the benefit of the extra water as in their native habitat. We also have pawpaw trees, American youthberry, got some bear buckeyes all over the place. I plant buckeye seeds every chance I get. Have a lot of elephantophis that's growing naturally in the understory. And here's a deciduous holly. Have a strawberry bush.
Oh,
Here's some of the native ferns. I'm going to develop this area to where there's no lawn, just to have a mass planting of native plants, but it's in development. It will take some time. Here's another native fringe tree, a smaller one, a patch of Amsonia, blue star, and some small ferns growing in. When I landscape, I like to create spaces. I like to create rooms. So I like the privacy of this space. I like a little open area to visit, and then splashes of color and texture. And I love places for the birds to utilize. So in my screened porch, I can watch them. Road into the north 4.5 acres that we purchased in 2016. But I wanted to show what we do with Chinese tallow trees. We don't like to use poison on them. We like to ring them at the base.
show me.
This one wasn't
Oh,
ringed. This one
okay.
was done professionally because it's so big. But they cut it off and we left the stump because the birds use it. They'll nest in it and it produces a lot of bugs. And we have red-bellied woodpeckers and downy woodpeckers that all use it. So when we ring one, I'll show you later, we may have to do it a couple of times. You might have to do it 3 years in a row, but eventually it dies. And then those are the ones that are far away from the house. When they fall, it doesn't matter. You know, they're not going to hurt anything. So when we bought in 2016, after I retired, this land came for sale, 4.5 acres of pasture land, and we decided to use it. We kind of lost our sunset from the trees on our property and thought we could expand on this. When we started cleaning out the trees here, we looked at the fence line, and we have probably a dozen or more mature mulberry trees. So that's a real treat for us and for the birds. And we're turning this part into fruit and vegetable production in raised beds. And then out on the north side, I'm turning that into a forest for windbreak and habitat, a small part of it. And then the rest of it will be restored Cajun prairie. And it looks like a bunch of them are, which is just fine with me. This part of the prairie is what, as a scientist, I call the reference or control area. The prairie in the back, we tilled in, we seeded, and we're managing with burning. This, we have not touched at all. This is the land as we got it. So we mow it down in the wintertime. That's the only maintenance we do. So we're going to see how it reacts differently to our prairie in the back once it has a seed source of the plants that we've restored back there. This whole land that you're looking at when we purchased it in 2016 was pasture. And I knew when I designed it I wanted about an acre on the north side of a forest. So I started planting trees. I used ball and burlap trees, this oak, this live oak here, and some of the others were from a neighboring landscape, so I knew they were in this type of soil, and I thought they would do well. So I did those, and then I used container trees as well, the ash, the magnolia, to see how they did, if it was worth the price for the ball and burlap versus the containers. I would go container from actually. But also I'm experimenting with what works out here. There's Yopon hollies do not work. They don't like this soil, but American hollies do. But most of the trees I've put in, I researched well enough to know that they would work. We've got some buttonbush out here, wax myrtle, Itea virginica, common name.
Sweet spire.
Sweet spire, right. So when I planted this, everything was kind of small. It was super hot out here. It gets hot and dry in the summer. And we'd come and work out here, and we couldn't, in the summer, just couldn't work at all. It was so hot. And I've just realized this summer, I was standing in the shade of a sycamore tree, and that was a great accomplishment to actually finally have shade. The idea is that all this grass will be shaded out in the future, and it won't have to be mowed. You know, meanwhile we let it grow up and just mow it in the winter.
Okay.
This is the prairie that we designed, I guess you could say, and managed. We have trails throughout. We disced it up in the beginning, which we probably shouldn't have done. One method was to kill everything with poison and come in and plant seeds. But instead we seeded it with local seed sources for this type of prairie, and so now we're getting things that, some things I knew were here before, and some things I knew were introduced by the seed. So I'm pleased. We have some weeds in that are bad, but I just believe that over time the fire regimen will get rid of those.
Okay.
So this is a big chick seed. I'm blanking. It's a little chick seed is something that we've grown at the greenhouse, but this was in the seed mix that I got, as well as the eupatorium. I think it's hyssop leaf thoroughwort. That was not here before. There's a eupatorium that's taller that was in the prairie before. Here we have some clustered bushmilk. And some swamp sunflower, Helianthus augustifolius. What else? We have blue stem coming in, thick here. And I think this is the slender blue stem. If you see a greener blue stem that's bushy on the top, it's bushy blue stem. And then over on the other side, I've planted a couple of big blue stems. So in this area, we've got a lot of goldenrod. We've got some mist flower, that's the purple flower there with the eupatorium above it. The bluer grass in the middle out here by the clustered bush mint is Indian grass, and I also planted lawn spike. So we'll see how those do. Here is some flat top goldenrod that seems to be thriving here and is about to flower. And since we put this prairie in, we have nesting eastern meadowlarks. We have marsh wrens every winter that come in, and they live in the grass, and when you walk through and disturb them, you can hear them chitter to each other, and if they come up, they just come up above the grass and go right back down. They're very fun to have, and I usually put off burning until it's time for them to migrate. So here's some big blue stem here, and rattlesnake master has finished its flowering and is now in seed. And under the blue stem, you can't see it, is some indigo.
Oh,
Baptisia. So this is the entrance into our original property from the north 4.5 acres where our pond is. We have another tallow tree that's been cut back and is now home to woodpeckers. The pond is covered with duckweed for a year now. I'm not sure what that's about. I did read that it could be too much organic matter. Not sure, but it's something we'd like to manage if we could figure out a way to do it. We have river birch, we have cyrilla, sky-type plant, next to the river birch on the right across the very large button bush, and
Hanging over you.
yes, and it needs to be pruned. We prune it back heavily at the end of every season. And red maple, assorted pines.
And you put these in.
Yes.
And you dug the pond.
Well, the pond was partially dug. It was a cow trough type of pond. And when a tree line was taken out on the south side of the property, maybe 10, 15 years into our ownership, they had a backhoe here, and we asked them to dig out the pond deeper and larger. And so it's about 8 feet when it's filled up in the middle here.
So you've got some rushes.
Yeah, there's some juncas, there's some hibiscus and kosseletsky around the pond. Lots of seedlings of buttonbush
Oh yeah.
that we need to dig out every other year or so. On the other side, we have roughleaf dogwood and deciduous holly. Those were here. We have more sweet bay magnolia and buckeyes. And actually have some little leaf viburnum. Which is spiders to me. Looks like privet, but it's little leaf viburnum obovatum.
Mm-hmm.
Live oak planted when my mom passed. My co-workers gave it to me, and it's been thriving with this water source. Smooth sumac and sassafras. I've tried sassafras for years. This hill is the only place I've ever been able to grow it.
So
Neil, you say it.
what's that?
Let Neil
We
say
have the
it.
ultimate crepe murder.
There we go.
To do with any plants.
This is a shallow pond that was here when we got here, and it only holds water in heavy rains. But I've just thrown a lot of Louisiana irises in, and they're taking off. We have some red maples, mulberry, Ceylon palmetto, and a really nice sized ironwood tree and river birch that enjoy the wet.
Go ahead.
So here's the house that we purchased in 1984. It was a shell of a house that was built partially in the 1920s, and this is it today. Remodeled, added on to, full of porches, full of plants and birds. 34 years
It's
later.
the mother of all chicken food.
Oh yes. Oh my.
When it dies, I'm keeping the trunk until it rots, and all the rest of it can go. There's a red bay underneath it to pick up the slack, and a large hackberry.
And you've got a very nice fountain here. I bet the birds love that.